I'm Vijai Lakshmikanthan, CEO of Starlim North America Corporation. Southwestern Ontario offers to us many advantages, especially if you're a manufacturer, but other companies as well. I mean, first, the access to the full North American market within a 2-day drive. And so we have access to, in particular for us, manufacturers, the U.S. market, Mexico. For us, we can get to Utah in a couple of days. And so access through an open border is certainly one of the most important things for us as manufacturers, and a competitive advantage for being located along the 401 corridor. From a business cost standpoint, I think there aren't, if you look at smaller communities versus mid-sized versus large communities, there's small communities to mid-sized communities. There's not going to be a lot of difference in terms of the cost of doing business. And the reason for that is, you can pick up industrial land, probably a little bit less expensive in a smaller community than a mid-sized community, but then you have to consider, other factors like labor, access to labor, access to the amenities you need for education, training, healthcare services, quality of life, all of those things certainly play a role in your decision. And so there's not a lot of difference. Small to medium-sized communities offer a lot of the same advantages. I think being located in London certainly comes with a number of advantages. One of the ones that we talk about a lot is the quality of life. You hear a lot about the commute time. When you get into the major cities, you have a very long commute time. In London, you can get across the city in 25 minutes. And so that's certainly an advantage for you. Also, the access to the educational institutions. We've got one of the largest educational institutions in the country, Western University, along with a great college that we use and a lot of manufacturing companies use for training and development. That's Fanshawe College. And so there's a number of advantages of being located in this particular region, including access to an ample amount of labor, which is probably, I would argue, amongst manufacturing companies, at least the number one concern or issue that you have when you're setting up a location in any particular jurisdiction. I think the other thing that we have certainly is a very supportive community. Organizations like the Chamber of Commerce that put businesses together, network businesses together. We've got the London Economic Development Corporation, the LEDC, that does a tremendous job in attracting new businesses to the community, like-minded businesses to the community, and then as well supporting the existing businesses that are here to help them grow. And then, of course, very important in any community, but especially in our city, London, we've got a municipality that encourages job growth and supports job growth, right? So they have a very business-minded organization. And they've got the people in the right places to help businesses work through. So if you're thinking about an expansion, or if you're thinking about setting up your shop on a piece of industrial land, you're talking to business people, right, about business issues, and they're able to cut through some of the red tape that you need in order to get things going. So that's certainly an advantage that we draw upon here, and I think and that's present in certainly a lot of Canadian cities, a lot of municipalities in Ontario. But certainly in London and in our region. If I look at the federal government, if I look at the provincial government, federal government absolutely responded correctly by supporting us through various programs that were administered by the Crown Corporations, EDC, BDC, to push money out into the economy through the various programs, but to get in the hands of companies that need it. They also engaged the national banks, right, which are an important source of financing for the majority of companies, whether it be operating line or term loans, and they provided a backstop to those financing organizations. And so the federal government, and then on the individual level, with CERB and other things, they continue to be viewed as stepping up to the plate when we need it. So I think the federal government did incredible. The provincial government, the same. What I was certainly impressed was, and if you compare ourselves to other jurisdictions, we really provided an update to the people. We every day talking about what's going to happen with schools, talking about what's going to happen with businesses, talking about a reopening plan. This idea of a staged reopening. Now, it doesn't. A lot of people, probably in the beginning didn't like it, but it's about the public good, and we see in other places where the public good isn't viewed as perhaps as important. We see what happens. And so the provincial government, in my view, did an incredible job of staging our reopening to ensure that the public safety was number one, and we move into the new normal in a more organized fashion. And so that was also really good to see. And I received calls from the provincial ministry individuals, from the Ministry of Economic Development, asking how are things going, is there anything we can do for you, from folks from IRAP, folks that represented the Canadian government, to find out is there anything that we can do, how are you coping with what's going on. And so not only I got the phone call, I'm sure that numerous other businesses in our region, in our province, got the same phone call. And so I think they responded really well to what was going on. And look, as I said, no one saw this coming. And so they put in place programs in a very short period of time, which I thought was really incredible. The other thing I was really impressed with is when the Canadian government and the provincial government made a call out to companies asking for their support, whether it be in the production of ventilators or the production of masks or the various PPE that was needed to support the hospitals. Manufacturing companies stepped up to the plate, which is incredible to see, right? It kind of it reminds us of the importance of our manufacturing industry. To have localized manufacturing is so important to a country, to a province, to our city. Pre-COVID, the government, of course, had programs to help companies expand and grow in the province and the country. I think those programs had traditionally been focused on job growth, right? Those programs, if you wanted to access those programs, the most important question that you'd have to answer is how many jobs are you going to add, right? Because that's always the very political and sexy thing to see. I think moving to the new normal, getting out, in order for us to emerge out of this COVID pandemic period stronger, we probably have to change our focus a little bit and support companies on a broader range of criteria. For example, technology transfer, right? We've got to do a better job of recognizing that bringing technology into the country can do a wealth of good, just as much as job growth, right? Both are important. You can talk about things like how we training and development. As another example is the investment that certain companies make in training and development. That's important to the local economy, where we're not looking just at one set of criteria for evaluating whether companies receive funds. We just broaden our perspective a little bit. And so loosening those criteria and getting them focused in certain areas, I think is certainly going to help us to, or the federal government, the provincial government, to get programs out there to help our companies, get to the new normal. Currently, Canada, the government plays a significant role in promoting innovation in the private sector. Programs like the Accelerated Investment Incentive Program or the SHRED program, Scientific Research Experimental Development Program, it creates an environment where businesses can innovate without without the detriment to the existing operations. And I think that's certainly an area where the Canadian government, the federal government, can put more emphasis. And the other area where I think the government is keenly involved is in our educational institutions, right? And you mentioned one thing. It's the Canadian Centre for Product Validation, which is a collaborative organization that works with industry and Fanshawe College to help companies validate their products and get their products to market quicker, right? And so that's another example. I mean, there's numerous examples of the government working at University of Waterloo in 3D printing or robotics that we can talk about. It's just it's a very important investment that speaks to innovation. This speaks to what the federal government can do to help us move forward in the manufacturing industry, but also other industries. I would say the other thing is, over the last 3 years especially, I've seen a lot of growth in companies out there whose mission is to support the manufacturing sector by improving their operational efficiencies through the deployment of connected plant floor technologies. And I'm thinking in particular, there's a couple of companies down the road, Armo Tool, FreePoint Technologies, these companies, and even our OEM machine manufacturers, they are making their machines much smarter than they were just 3 years ago, right? And I think the other thing we've got to consider is that this makes Canada, this makes Ontario a great playground, right, for testing these technologies, because we have such a great diversity in companies here, right? So you can get, if you go out west, you can find timber processing companies that is part of the playground. If you go to Alberta, you're going to see structural metal manufacturing, or the oil and gas industry, which serves as a playground for implementing these technologies. And of course, in Ontario, you have automotive transportation industries, and so that serves as a playground for testing some of these new technologies, whether it's robotics, whether it's automation, and then that's of course helped by the fact that the federal government has incentives to promote playing in these playgrounds, right? It's very important to the entire industry, and it fits really well together.